Welcome to Programming Knowledge. So in this tutorial we are going to discuss about all the files and folders that ships with a Flutter package. So as you can see, the first folder is _tool. So it has some basic tools that we use in a developer console, and we will see what is a Dart developer console in one of the videos. Okay, then the next folder is .idea, and it has the basic Android Studio configurations which are used when we run the project on an Android Studio IDE. Then after that we have .vs code folder. So this folder is created by VS Code, which is the IDE I am using right now, and this folder will only be created when you change some default settings, and we can ignore this for now. Then the next folder is the Android folder. So as the name suggests, it has all the files that supports the Android functionality. So it is a super important folder. It contains all the files which are used by Flutter SDK to run our Flutter app on Android devices and Android emulators. It is a passive folder which is created by Flutter itself, and we generally don't need to change anything inside the folder except when we want some variation in Android and our iOS app. Then the next folder is the build folder. So it is also an important folder. It holds all the output files and the generated resources, and it is also a passive folder. Then the next folder is iOS folder. So it is also similar to Android folder, except as the name suggests, its target device is iOS. If you are using Windows, then you may or may not have this folder, as it is not allowed by Windows. But if you are using a Mac OS system, you will be able to see this iOS folder. And what it basically contains is an Xcode project. Xcode is the official development IDE for Apple devices. Then the next folder is the lib folder. As the name suggests, it stands for library, and 90% of interaction that we will have with this or any Flutter project is via this folder. This is the folder where we add all our Dart files and write codes for our project. Then the next folder is the test folder, and as the name suggests, it is used for writing test for the project, and that is done when we move from development to testing. So it is not our main concern right now. After that we have this .getignore, and it has all the version control settings. And if you don't know what is a version control, then you can do a quick Google and get your answer. Then after that we have .metadata and .packages. So it is system generated, and we don't need to worry much about them. Okay, and then next we have this demo.iml. So it is a project. It is the file that has the same name as the project. We will not work with this file also. It is just a file which works with internal dependencies and stuff, and the similar goes to pubspec.log. Then the next one is pubspec.yaml. So it is a file in which we will be working. Over here we can configure all the third-party packages that the project will use, similar to the app level build.gradle that we have in Android. We also configure other things such as fonts, location, images and stuff. Then back to pubspec.log. So pubspec.log is generated from pubspec.yaml, and it basically has a more structured settings than pubspec.yaml. Okay, so these were all the files, and we also have a readme.md. So over here we can specify something about our project, and if we are sharing our project, we can add some data over here so that the developer whom we are sharing to can read this and understand. Okay, so these were all the files that we have in a Flutter project, and now let's open our main.dart file. Okay, and let's see what is our prefabricated application has. Okay, so to run any Flutter project, I can simply go to run and then click on run without debugging. We can also use this start debugging, but it is a slower process. Okay, because in debugging we need to add some breakpoints and all. Okay, and we are not in that complex level of Flutter project. So I'll simply start with run without debugging, and then over here you can see the debug console has opened and it is writing launching. and the basic requirement is over here you can see I have a Flutter device, that means an Android device connected to my system. Okay, and if you also want you can use an iOS emulator instead of an Android emulator. Okay, but I'll go for an Android emulator right now, and let's wait for the build to finish. So once the application has started running, we can see we get something like this on our emulator. Now the basic UI designing that we do in Flutter is done by our widgets. That means that everything that we see on the screen is a tree of widgets. For example, the text that we see on the center is a widget, the app bar is a widget, and the floating action button is also a widget, and they all are the branches of the root widget, which is the screen, which is also referred as scaffold in Flutter. Okay, so that means scaffold is the root widget, and the center text, floating action button, app bar, all are the branch widgets of the scaffold root widget. Okay, and all these widgets have their sub widgets also, like the app bar has a text widget that displays the text on the app bar. The center widget also has a text widget which displays the text that you see on the center. Similarly, the floating action button has an icon widget so as to specify which icon will be displayed on the floating action button, and similarly we can also have a text widget if we want to display some text below this icon in our floating action button. Okay, so now if we go to our main.dart and if you look for build method, over here you can see first of all we have the scaffold widget. Okay, that means our parent widget, the root widget. Then we have the app bar widget, which is a branch of the scaffold widget, and then inside this app bar widget we have another widget, that is the text widget, and over here we have widget.title that basically displays the text that we can see on the app bar. Then after that we have this body inside scaffold, and body refers to the entire screen leaving the app bar. Okay, then inside the body you can see center, that means our elements will be displayed in the center. Then we have a child, column, main axis element. We will discuss about these things in later in another tutorials. Then after that you can see we have a text widget over here, and you have a text written, you have pushed the button this many times, which is similar to the text that we see in our center widget. Okay, then similarly this text also, where we have dollar and underscore counter, that stands for string interpolation, which we have discussed in one of our Dart deep dive videos. What basically happens that the value stored in this counter variable will be displayed at this place. After that we have this floating action button. Okay, and it also takes an icon widget and it displays the add icon. Okay, now over here you can see our application also has some functionality. That means if I click on this plus button, over here the value will keep on increasing. Okay, so how does this happen? This happens that inside the floating action button we have a parameter called onPressed, okay, which calls underscore increment counter, which means whenever this onPressed method is called, then this increment counter is referred to by the onPressed method. So if you look in the file for this increment counter, over here we can see that this underscore increment counter is a method, and the underscore which we have before the method name or variable name refers to that it is a private member of the class. Okay, so inside this method you can see we have something called set state. We will discuss about this later, and we are incrementing the value of underscore counter, and it is the same counter which we are displaying in our text. Okay, so now just to check, I want to increment the value by 2 instead of 1, so I'll just write counter plus 2. Okay, so now if I'll save this, this will be built automatically. Over here you can see. Okay, this will take a few minutes if you do it for the first time. Once done, if you go back to your application and if you click on this plus, then instead of incrementing by 1, it will increment by 2. Okay, so this is the basic structure of any Flutter application. We will start building the application from scratch in our next tutorial. Thank you.